hey, I was trying to come up with a new camera design, new camera model that we could maybe use, and I'm really struggling. Okay, look, you can copy this, just try and not make it look obvious. Say no more. Okay, here it is. They're literally the same camera. So today we're talking about the a7CII and the a7IV, and which one should you buy? Okay, before we get into it, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more comparisons, shootouts, and reviews. All right, now let's talk about these guys. So what are these cameras? At first glance, they look completely different, and you'd be forgiven for thinking they function differently as well. And sure, this has a nice big viewfinder, it's big, it's kind of, chunky. This is small, little, tiny, lightweight. However, they are both sharing the same exact 33 megapixel sensor. They both shoot 4K video, 422 10-bit up to 60p. They both have burst rates up to 10 frames a second, and largely internally are the same camera. That is, except for one key difference. The a7CII has a dedicated AI processor for autofocus. The a7IV does have autofocus that is powered and informed by AI, but it lacks that sort of dedicated processor that the a7CII has. So apart from the handling differences, the big key question that came to my mind when I knew I was gonna have to compare them is, what difference does the AI processor make? So to put that to the test, I decided to enlist the help of one of our employees, Taylor, to run both of these cameras through some very difficult autofocus tests to see if we could get one of these guys to break. Both cameras were set to AFC human detection with eye autofocus enabled for every single test that we did. And for each individual test, we made sure that the cameras were using the exact same lens. So our first test was a very dark, overly colorful scene. I was trying to mimic like what you might see at like a really small, local concert. And for that, we used the 50mm f1.2 at f1.2. That f1.2 aperture really made sure there was very little room for error. And as we were wrapping that up, I decided to get a little weird with it. All right, so now we're gonna get really crazy with it because I had a really funny idea. Cop chase. Now, it's pretty clear that especially under these scenarios, neither camera was doing particularly well. So it's time to move on to our next test, the extreme backlight test, using the G Master 70-200 f2.8 version 2. And last of all was actually our control. That was using a 24-105, using good lighting, basically right here, just with slightly different lighting setup. And we tried just basic posing, moving around, and kind of covering the face and seeing how quickly the autofocus could recognize a human face. And afterwards, I talked with Taylor to get her opinions on how these cameras performed. All right, so Taylor, what are your thoughts? Do you feel like, at least in the autofocus department, there was any sort of clear winner?
I feel like it's a little bit iffy for me. I do feel as though the a7CII was really good with our first test, the first couple, but other than that, I feel like they're very similar.
From a kind of handling standpoint, what are your thoughts? Like, how do they feel when you're using them?
I like the feeling of the a7IV because I like the grip. I like the viewfinder of it. I feel like the a7CII, it's not a terrible viewfinder, but it's awkward for me when I'm like, it's just kind of in my way a little bit. That one feels more natural with the placement. Not sure. What are your thoughts?
I can't deny that in the hand, the a7IV feels great. Like the a7CII is definitely lighter. Like comparing them apples to apples, like, yep, definitely a lot lighter. Even though this one has a higher resolution viewfinder, I didn't really see a huge visual difference between either one.
Yeah, inside the actual viewfinder, I agree. I don't see a huge difference in quality, but it's just the placement for me.
So I know you already have an a7R IV, but heaven forbid it gets run over by a bus or you drop it off a yacht and you only had enough money for one of these cameras, which one do you think you'd buy?
I might go with the a7C II because it's so light and I travel a lot and I like having something compact. I don't need a whole lot of resolution, so I mean, it probably would be best for me in my bag. What about you?
That's the annoying thing, is I feel like I'd prefer this because like the AI autofocus, I don't know if I saw a big enough difference in performance. Like I'd be like, oh, it seems like the C2 is doing better, and then it would do the same thing that the a7IV did. And so I don't know, they're so close. You know, I think this one looks cooler.
I do think the silver is pretty sleek.
But like things like the viewfinder for you are not really the deal breaker. It's more like...
It's more, I think I like the compactness of it. And I agree, there's not too many differences and there's not a lot of instances where I'm actually shooting in very low light or cop light type situations.
Hope not.
But yeah, let's hope not. But I feel like, I don't know, that would be great for traveling because I try to do carry-on bags, really lightweight. I don't need something heavy. It's nice to just pull out my camera, take my pictures. Not that it's a huge deal about weight, but I personally would prefer it to be lighter.
So Taylor, one last thing, because this was immediately apparent when I started using it. The sound of the shutter.
It is
what
weird.
do you think? Okay.
It's so weird. I'm used to, I don't know, it sounds like a clank, clank, clank kind of.
So to give you an idea, it has like a nice, it's like a click, but it kind of rings out a little.
And then this one's, why? It sounds like this one's motor is broken.
Yeah, like
That's kind of how it sounds.
that's the thing, is it sounds like, is there something wrong with it? But you know, obviously we've been shooting with this for like the last couple of hours, and all the photos seem to be fine. I've been shooting with it earlier this week. All the photos are fine. Like clearly nothing's broken. But so if you can live with weird shutter sounds, or if Taylor can live with a weird shutter sound, then she'll take the a7C II.
That's true. You know, I think I could live with it. Maybe.
So Taylor, I think, cut right to the heart of why you might choose one camera over the other with these two. And that really comes down to form factor. You know, the differences in autofocus and things like that, like the card slots and whatnot, are pretty minor. And especially the case of autofocus, it was really hard to notice a significant difference between the two. I scrubbed through the footage, I went through frame by frame, I went through each photo, and I can say with 50% certainty that the a7C II might do a little bit better in autofocus. You know, but the important thing is it's actually really hard to tell. So which one should you get? To me, it really comes down to personal preference. Are you somebody that's gonna need the extra card slot? Do you like this form factor? Is this your most comfortable shooting experience? Or even are you a professional who wants a camera that feels and looks professional? This, even though, again, as far as we can see, is functionally the same, but has a more kind of relaxed, if you will, less professional look and feel to it. I think the only reason why you might want the C2 over the a7IV from a features perspective is if you are specifically photographing insects, trains, planes, automobiles. So, you know, all you train spotters out there, this is gonna be the guy for you. But what do you think? Did you notice a difference in performance? Which one would you choose if you suddenly lost your camera tomorrow and had to buy a new one and all you had enough money was for one or the other? Whatever it is, comment below. We'd love to hear about it. Shout out to Delkin devices. Everything you've seen here today was shot using Delkin black cards. You can check them out in a link in the description. You can also buy both of these cameras at pictureline.com, also in the description. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to take your camera out today. See you next time.